Hi, welcome to the 3-credit practicum for ESLG 486. So my assumption is that if you're watching this video, you're taking the course for 3 credits, which probably means that you've previously completed the 1 credit and the 2 credit practicums. So this introductory message is especially for you. You are at the tail end of your preparation experience for getting ready to work with English language learners, either in the U.S. or outside of the U.S. So I've got a little bit of advice for you. That's my introduction. So one thing that I want you to do in this 3-credit practicum is I want you to be thinking like and acting like a professional. Someone years ago gave me advice. They said, if you want to move up to the next step, look like you're already there. So in other words, if you are an employee and you want to look like a manager, and you want to be a manager, look like a manager. Do everything the manager does, not the bad stuff, but the good stuff. So being on time, being responsible, making decisions, being prepared, those kinds of things. So this is your time to really be starting to look like a teacher. If someone walks into the classroom that you're in, you should be easily mistaken for the teacher, at least momentarily, rather than like a student. So that's my first piece of advice. The second piece of advice is every opportunity that comes your way, especially those that are given to you by your collaborating teacher, your mentoring teacher, please grab onto them, run with them, even if you're not sure that you're ready. Go ahead and try. If someone is reaching out to you and offering you an opportunity, it means that they think that you're ready, and that means that you probably are. So grab those opportunities. Some of you are headed off into experiences in which you will often be observing teachers. You'll be observing more than doing. And so for those of you in that experience, what I would suggest that you do is to be thinking like a teacher. Be thinking about every choice that you see the instructor make, and be asking yourself, why did he or she choose to introduce it that way? Why that paragraph to focus on in the reading? Why are those the particular questions that the instructor chose to start the discussion? And open it up to how would you have done it? Once you begin to realize that even very experienced, excellent, successful teachers aren't doing it the only way that it can be done, that there's infinite numbers of choices that can be made, that kind of opens a door for you to realize that your own teaching persona, your own approach to things is legitimate. So you need to start discovering that, and one way to discover it, if you're mostly observing, is to kind of have an inner dialogue with yourself as you're watching teaching play out. Would I have done it differently? How could I have done that? If you see something you're not sure students understand, play a mind game with yourself. How could you have supported it so that students would be more likely to understand? So I'm really asking you to take on a highly active, kind of interactive role, even if you are simply observing most of the time. Some of you will be placed in situations where you'll be tutoring. You might be tutoring after school. You might be tutoring outside of classes. You might be doing pull-out work in elementary school classrooms where you're taking a student into the hallway or to the back of the classroom to work on something specific, often because a teacher has asked you to do that. And for you, your experience will be very different because every time you approach helping the student or the students, you should be asking yourself, what is it that the students need from me right now? Or as you're leaving a lesson, thinking about the next day, what is it that the students need from me tomorrow? What's next? And so you're having a very different kind of inner dialogue with yourself. But every time I've stopped and asked myself, What does the student or what do the students need from me? I've never gotten a wrong answer. So just ask yourself that. And for some of us operate in very kind of loud and multitasking kind of environments. Maybe you're driving home and you're thinking about it. You're on a noisy bus and you're thinking about it. For me, I kind of need a quiet spot, a place where I can just kind of let my mind go and just focus on the students and thinking about where they are and what they didn't understand today and where we need to go next. So whatever works for you, but that would be the direction. My advice if you end up mostly tutoring. So there are 4 things that I'd like you at the beginning of this practicum to be thinking about, because they are the very 4 things that most students, in my experience, struggle with in their 3-credit practicum. The first is to be really kind of aware of your teacher talk. So notice how you say things, and keeping it simple whenever possible is a plus. One thing that teachers often do, new teachers, is they'll say something, they'll realize it wasn't quite clear, they'll say it again in a different way, and they just kind of keep piling it on, more and more words in an attempt to fix it. So one thing you might do, as if you know what's going to occur, like for example, if you're tutoring a student that you're in control of, you get to choose what happens in the lessons, be thinking ahead. Okay, I'm going to have to explain this concept. How am I going to do it? And try it out. You will get better at it, but only through practice. And so find ways also to support your teacher talk. Make it as visual as possible. And one thing I suggest to students is imagine that the student can only watch you, they can't hear you. And for students with really low levels of English, that's what the world is like. Yes, you're producing sound, but it's not making any sense to them. Instead, they're watching your mouth, they're watching your face, they're watching your hands, they're watching what you're pointing at, they're watching what you're holding up. So just imagine, as you're explaining something, that your words can't be heard at all. How could you carry the meaning, at least part of the meaning, visually? And so that's what I would task you with your teacher talk. The second thing I'd have you think about is think about the way that you ask questions. One thing that teachers, especially new teachers, often do is they will, instead of asking a simple question, they will ask a 2-part question, and students don't know which part to answer. So they might say something like, do you want to continue on with this activity, or is it time to stop? Or did you want to repeat that again, or did you understand it okay? And so even students with high levels of English proficiency, even native speakers, often get stuck. Which part do you want me to answer? And so I would suggest that just notice if you're doing that, keep the question simple. If the question is really, should we repeat this again? Keep it at that. Should we repeat this again? Another thing I'd like you to notice is how you carry out praise. Often when we're beginning teaching, we give out what I think of as empty praise. We say, good job. Hey, yes, that's correct. You got the right answer. Good for you, things like that. But think about it this way. Every time you're giving praise because a student did something right, what you really want is you want that student and any other students who are within hearing distance to notice what was the thing that the student used to get that right answer. In other words, what was the strategy that they used? Our goal is always to help our students pack their bags so they get to take with them when they leave us as many strategies as possible that they can apply. So instead of saying, great, good job, you might say, that answer is correct. How did you get that? Or you might say, how did you know? Or how did you solve that? That kind of thing. And then once they say how they did it, turn it into something that students can take with them. Say, good for you. You looked back at the sentence before, and that's how you knew the answer. So one thing we can do is we can go to the sentence before and we can check the meaning. So turn it into something that they can take with them. Empty praise just kind of sits there. They got it right, but they probably don't realize why they got it right, and no one around them gets to experience the learning either. So pay attention to your praise. And finally, the last thing I'd like you to think about, just even starting your practicum, is when you talk to be clear rather than waffling. So we often, in an attempt to kind of soften our language, I think, and probably because we new teachers don't feel entirely confident, we often say things like, okay, I think that I want you to get into groups of 4. So a student who's learning English, first of all, you've just produced a really complex sentence that could have been very, very simple. But also there's enough, if they have, so they're going to be struggling if they're a low-level student. If they're a higher-level student, there's enough waffling in there that they may not understand what it is that you want them to actually do. Are you stating that you're not sure, or what is it actually that you're saying? So instead say, okay, get into groups of 4, right? So just be clear. You can always go back and redo it, say, oops, I meant 3. Okay, get into groups of 3. But try not to waffle. Try not to waffle. Okay, so that is my best advice for you for starting out in your 3-credit practicum. You are so close to entering the profession. And I'd really like you to think about your mentoring teacher, your collaborating teacher, as someone who you are going to list on your references. So every time you show up, be thinking to yourself, am I showing up at the time I want them to remember when they're filling out the reference form? In other words, be early. Don't just be on time, be early. If you show up and you're really unprepared for something that they'd asked you to prepare for, will that be the time that they remember when they're filling out their reference form? So just be keeping that in mind, that if this relationship works, this is someone who can speak to having seen you interact with students, and they can speak to having seen you teach. Even if it's just one-on-one tutoring or moving around small groups, that still counts. So that's what we need as new and beginning teachers. We need as many people as possible who can vouch for us. So good luck getting started on your 3-credit practicum. If there's any lack of certainty at all about where you are placed, please contact me and I will help you figure it out. Okay, thank you.